Hello, class. This week we are covering Chapter 13, which covers the topics of violence, victims, and criminal justice. The U.S. has approximately 2.29 million people that are behind bars, and that equates to 1 in every 100 American adults. This is more than any other nation. And when we look at adults that are under the supervision of the correctional system, the statistic is 1 out of every 31 adults. The extent of violence, crime, and victimization is significant, and individuals in the human services field are often faced with the consequences of these problems. Perhaps it is a social worker or a caseworker or a correctional officer that is working with an individual who is incarcerated, working in the prisons, working with police, working with individuals as they reintegrate after incarceration, or they are advocating for the rights of individuals who are incarcerated or in the correctional system. So there are many roles that individuals in the human services field will play in regards to criminal justice. When we look at the criminal justice system, its goals are to maintain public safety and to punish lawbreakers by confining or controlling them. Now, we know that social work does not look to assist individuals in a way that is punishing or controlling. So it's interesting to take a look at social work in a criminal justice setting, because the goals, the mission, and everything that drives the work that social workers do is very different from the criminal justice system. So if we look at the different areas that a social worker might work in terms of criminal justice, social workers might specialize in juvenile corrections, in rehabilitation, case management, counseling, police social work, and victim assistance services. And this might be in federal, state, and local governments, or nonprofit agencies, or they might be lobbying and advocating for the rights of individuals in the criminal justice system. This TED Talk is available in the Blackboard course shell, and I would like for you to watch it. It is a new approach where the principles and the guidelines, the things that drive the work that social workers do, meets law enforcement or meets policing. So you'll see this approach and how effective it can be when we are working with individuals in the criminal justice system, and how a more rehabilitative approach can be much more effective. When we're looking at crime in the United States, you can look at various resources from the U.S. Justice Department and the Bureau of Justice Statistics. The way that it's measured and the way that we look at the statistics for crime is via the annual National Crime Victimization Survey, the annual FBI Uniform Crime Rate Report, and the National Incident-Based Reporting System. So if you go to the U.S. Justice Department website or the Bureau of Justice Statistics, you will be able to see all of these current statistics. And these reports are used to inform policy decisions and also to develop appropriate responses to crime. In the human services field, we also have to be knowledgeable about the different reasons, the different theories of why criminal behavior takes place, or why an individual engages in criminal behavior. And so we draw upon numerous theories, both psychological in nature, sociological in nature, and a combination of both. So first, let's take a look at the individualistic theories of criminal behavior. The first is what we call the deterrence theory. And this is a theory that states that people do not engage in criminal behavior because of the fear of punishment. So deterrence says that people, deter from criminal behavior because of that fear. For example, like the death penalty, they will not commit certain crimes because they fear that punishment. Biological determinism could be a reason why people turn to criminal behavior. And biological determinism states that there is some sort of biological or genetic predisposition that kind of makes someone more at risk for engaging in criminal behavior. So something in their genes that lends itself to certain behaviors. Psychological determinism is very similar to biological determinism, but basically refers more to a predisposition to mental illness. And again, both the biological and the psychological determinism are reasons that are believed to be beyond the individual's control. Behaviorism is another school of thought or a discipline in psychology that is based around learning theories. So basically saying that in looking at criminal behavior, that someone would basically learn criminal behavior, and that might be through operant conditioning, through reinforcement or punishment. Or maybe they make certain associations as what happens with classical conditioning. So basically, it looks at more outside forces, environmental forces that would create these behaviors. So it would be learned. So perhaps someone sees someone steal something and they get away with it. And so they're reinforced by being able to keep that stolen item, for example. So that would say that they learned that I can get away with this. Or if someone watches them do it so that's a type of observational learning. And so they observe these behaviors and then they start engaging in those behaviors as well. So behaviorism is a focus on the environment and what is learned, whether it's through reinforcement, whether it's through observational learning or modeling, or whether it's learned through making associations. Sociological theories look at how certain social factors contribute to criminal behavior. So we would look at things like poverty and how that connects with crime. Individuals that are living in poverty are at a higher risk of engaging in criminal behavior. Sociological theories would also look at one's geographic area, so the community that they live in and what's happening in the community. Are they living in cities? Are they living in more urban areas or suburban areas or rural areas? The broken window theory is a sociological theory that states that criminal behavior is a function of one's social context. And this particular experiment and theory looked at how the level of crime correlates with the number of broken windows in a particular community. The more broken windows that were in a community, the more crime existed in that community. So this was another type of theory that helps us to try to understand why criminal behavior happens for an individual and also in a larger group and communities. It's really important that in this field that human service workers be open to all theories. When we take an eclectic approach and we rely upon numerous theories, we can gain a more comprehensive understanding of why an individual engages in criminal behavior or why a community tends to have higher rates of crime. And so this sounds a lot like the person and environment concept, right? We're looking beyond the person. We're looking how that person is functioning in an environment, so individual factors about that individual, but also how that environment is impacting the individual's behavior. So we need to keep in mind that these multiple theories help us to be driven by that person and environment concept. So as I alluded to before, the criminal justice system is in direct conflict with the social work profession's reliance on the strengths perspective, because the criminal justice system focuses on punishment and control, and the strengths perspective is about looking at an individual, focusing on their strengths, and also helping them to better themselves by focusing on their resources and really driving that self-determination, that responsibility for choice. And if a strengths perspective were utilized more in the criminal justice system, the primary goals, instead of punishment and control, would be prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation. These efforts prove to be more effective and to lower crime rates. So this is just a little introduction to chapter 13, but as you read throughout this chapter, you'll also explore the topics of how women are disproportionate victims from sexual or physical abuse. You'll also look at things such as the racial imbalance and inmates with disabilities, also inmates with chronic health problems, and the issue of undocumented immigrants and crime. The textbook also goes through some historical background regarding prisoner assistance programs and how criminal justice social work came about, as well as the first juvenile courts that Jane Addams was involved with in the early 1900s. And so as you explore this historical context of criminal justice social work, you'll also explore the roles and the skills that social workers have and need to work in these types of practice settings. And social workers help to monitor and modify legal practices to ensure that fair treatment is given to all. And so social workers may be in juvenile and family courts. They may be in juvenile corrections or adult corrections. They work in probation, parole, and community corrections. They also work in victim assistance services. And in our Blackboard course shell, you'll see for New York and in Orange County, the victim assistance services that we have. Social workers might also work with domestic violence, and you will see the resource in our Blackboard folder for Fearless, which is formerly known as Safe Homes. And some of the issues that social workers advocate for on behalf of individuals who have been incarcerated and individuals who are victims are crime and mental illness, the death penalty, the rights of victims. And the thing that drives social workers who are working in the criminal justice field are the ethics and the values that are instilled as per the National Association for Social Work. So let's take a look at those. Social workers have a professional commitment to ensure the right of all people to receive treatment. So this sometimes can be difficult when you're dealing with someone that is involved with the criminal justice system, because you may not agree with what they have done, and you may not feel that they deserve to be treated as everyone else because they have committed a crime. However, social workers have that commitment, that professional commitment. So if you are going to work in the criminal justice field for social work or human services, you have to ensure that you'll be able to do that, that you'll be able to still look at that individual as an individual and fight for their rights. Another value is that with intervention, people can be rehabilitated. So again, it's that whole recovery model where the belief that interventions can be successful. And lastly, how to use the strengths perspective in a system that promotes punishment over rehabilitation. So as you watched that video about police social work, that is a very unique situation, and it's taking a lot of time for law enforcement to include and kind of shift their mindset about how we can best help individuals. Punishment does not extinguish behaviors. Rehabilitation can. So I just want to leave you with this last quote here by Attorney General Loretta Lynch back in 2016. She says, improving rehabilitation programs and re-entry outcomes doesn't just help formerly incarcerated individuals. It's also good for our communities as a whole. And I think you saw that from watching that video, just how successful that approach was for those specific communities. If you have any questions about this chapter or about violence victims in criminal justice, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to discuss this further with you.